Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We've got a lot to talk about today around security and privacy as we look towards the future around this new digital economy that we're building and living in right now. These two things are atop of our mind. How do we keep ourselves secure? How do we keep our businesses secure? And also, how do we think about, or how should we think about, privacy, both when it comes to us as consumers and the applications that we develop? So we brought together a few of the best and the brightest from around the world to share their thoughts and insight, along with on the ground perspective around these two topics, as again, we know they're very relevant to today's applications and products being built as we are now living not only more digital, but also a more connected life, as we spoke earlier in the week here on VCTV. But first, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you're liking what you hear, click subscribe, share the episode today, and make sure to check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear from today's speakers and all of the speakers a part of the VCTV family as well. And if you'd like to be on a show like today, reach out. We'll find the right spot for you. Big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria, who make VCTV possible every single day. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Let's go ahead and jump in. Raghu, welcome back to the show. Pleasure to have you. This is an area of expertise for you. But first, can you share a little bit of your intro and a little bit of your background for everyone?
Sure, Kyle, and thank you, VCTV. I'm a serial entrepreneur, angel investor, and from Princeton, New Jersey. I advise companies, strategic advice from seed to harvest, and in different areas. Cybersecurity is one of my passions, all around de-risked impact investments, green tech, clean tech as well. I would say that right now, this year, because of the pandemic, a lot of things have changed, like in many industries, but particularly for the cybersecurity and privacy space, because pre-pandemic, certain things weren't acceptable. For instance, contact tracing and things like that, which people were willing to give up the privacy to get the additional security. And that's related to a lot of other stuff that's happening with opening up the economy and things like that. So I think privacy has been brought more to the forefront. Data ethics is important, and who gets to own the data is important. And I look forward to talking about all this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Raghu. Gary, welcome back as well here on VCTV. A little intro and a little background for everybody.
Yeah, no, great to be here, Kyle. Great to see my friend Raghu, and hi, Maria. So my name's Gary Fowler. I'm an investor and serial entrepreneur. I've done 17 companies. I've been involved in the original management team, was involved in the original management team at Click Software, an Israeli company that we brought over from Haifa, did an IPO on NASDAQ, and 22 months ago, it was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion. I also am the co-founder of Viva.ai, a premier AI HR tech company that we started to do remote workforce management 2 years ago before the pandemic. So the pandemic's been very, very good for us. Today, I'm the CEO, co-founder, and president of GSD, Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture local studio located in Silicon Valley, curating companies from around the world. We have companies from Africa, Germany, the US, I mean, literally you name it. So we look for those incredible AI companies that can make a dent in the universe and have the potential to be a unicorn. So great to be here and great to join today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you as well, Raghu and Gary. I want to jump right in on today's topic. So as we look at security and privacy, and Raghu, you kind of touched on this in your introduction, is, nothing is free. We usually give up something to get something. And when it comes to the digital products that we're using and some of those connected products, usually that's the case. Give us kind of a resetting of the table as to where we are right now when it comes to security and privacy here in 2021. From your perspective?
I think 2021, as you can tell, the whole issue with people moving off WhatsApp to Signal. I mean, the WhatsApp has had the contact information for whatever time, and this just that one announcement saying they're going to make it formal has made a lot of people shift over. So people are much more aware of things, but then there's also you have to give up certain things like to get security, you're giving up privacy for contact tracing. To get into building for going back to work. You probably have to get tested. There's some of the personal information that's going in. So I think privacy is going to become a lot more important. Cybersecurity, just purely from a data perspective, is out there, but privacy is all about who owns the data and how can you actually, comply. The compliance, the punitive aspect of privacy is going to be much bigger. I think in Europe, GDPR is already pretty punitive. It's based on the top line of your company, not based on an incident or things like that. So I think CCPA, which has come in the US, also in California, I think is going to be enforced a lot more. So I think the privacy aspect is going to come to the forefront. Security aspect is important, but as long as you have the guardrails, I think it's okay. So I see that through the whole stack. The other thing that's happened is a bunch of companies are finally kind of moving to the cloud, which were resisting the whole the cloud migration, and that while it adds to the kind of reduces the cost and things like that, it adds another dimension in that things like ransomware. So you cannot have anymore just a perimeter security concept where you're kind of preventing people from entering your area, right? So you need decentralized solutions, and one of the companies that I'm working with called Splitbyte has come up with what I would call a cyber vaccine or data vaccine, where you cannot go to one or two locations, and even if you breach those systems, you cannot get at the data. I'm actually hoping Gary joins us soon as well in this one, because this has a potential to be a unicorn, and it has a privacy solution as well, because data that is to be deleted, one of the big dilemmas that institutions face is when you delete the data, how do you get it back in case there is law enforcement or litigation or disaster recovery and things like that? You have to be able to get it out of your system for privacy compliance, but you need to be able to get it back for those other legitimate purposes. And that's where, again, Splitbyte as a solution, we kind of digitally shred it and bury it into the multiple spaces, and then you have an ombudsman who could potentially get it back, for the legitimate reasons. So there's a lot of excitement and a lot of opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Raghu. And Gary, I want to come to you on that same question, resetting the stage, but also anything to add on to Raghu's point as well.
Yes, I mean, look at, I'm a country boy from Pennsylvania. So Kyle, there, in the last year, the world has had to change, and there's a lot more remote work is done, and online collaboration is really intensified. So this has created a great opportunity to be able to really change the paradigm. But at the same time, it's given us another challenge, because as we have these teams located everywhere, we also have increased threats from the outside. So having the kind of systems in place, and I want to, there's a term that it's really interesting now. If we look at security process automation, and, the challenge today is that we've got a lot of redundant security processes that need to be done, sometimes by hand, but we got, in 2021, it's estimated there'll be 3.5 million unfulfilled cybersecurity jobs. 3.5 million. It's incredible. So, and what we have to do is we have to use the artificial intelligence and the technologies that we have to set these pre-established rules and procedures to be able to get this stuff done, much like we do with robotic process automation. The other thing is, as we look at data privacy with GDPR and issues around it, so being able to manage that, the growing concerns around data privacy and data management, security. So being able to manage that, setting up the right strategy and policies, and really talking about the kind of impact that's going to have in an organization. And opposed to what we did before, where the CSOs many times acted alone, we really got to have these fixed joint teams where we have HR and governance and procurement really working together, because, again, the model shifted. So we're excited. And, I love Splitbyte, these decentralized approaches, because, as you know, Kyle, quantum computers are coming. The start, the tidal waves ahead of us. And if we don't have systems like Splitbyte in front of us, I'll tell you, nothing good is going to happen, because the greatest threat to countries, the greatest threat to companies, the greatest threat to individuals right now is the whole cybersecurity outside of the pandemic, right? It's a challenge, because every day here we are on Zoom and we're using our systems remotely every single day. So as you get more in the cloud, there's more opportunity for cyber attacks.
So speaking of that, let's go one level deeper. I mean, when we look at cyber attacks from a quantum level, I mean, how does that change the game, Gary? I mean, we've talked about how quantum is, so powerful, but putting it into a real world application, what does this look like? And the threat, impact, and or benefit it can have around security and privacy.
Well, I mean, so if we keep it simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it, what do hackers do? A hacker gets out there and a hacker starts hacking, or groups of hackers hack. But the difference is, when you have a quantum computer and on the low end, you're able to process something 100 million times faster than a supercomputer like Google, which means you can do something that would take 10,000 years in 200 seconds. It means you can start running all kinds of analyzing encryption, analyzing passwords very, very, very quickly, and figure out where you need to attack. Well, at the same time, the quantum computers on the other side of this, one side, they're offensive tool. On the other side, if you have it right, you got a defensive tool. So like you're going to have two quantum computers, after each other. It's going to be like the battle of the bots. And that is actually, if you look at how things have changed, you got Microsoft, you got Google, you got IBM. On the quantum side, you got the Chinese, right? It just announced the fastest quantum computer in the world. So we need to get these in place in advance. And I say, let's use the quantum computers for the goodness of humanity. Let's do drug discovery. Let's make our lives better and our supply chain more transparent. Let's use it for the betterment, not to keep going at each other. But unfortunately, that will occur, and you need to have the systems in place, because as Admiral Owens said on my show last week, the person that pulls the trigger first wins. Let's hope that we're defending in case somebody does do that, right? And let's set the systems up, whether we're a company, individual, or a country.
Which is a good point. Raghu, anything to add on that? And then I have a follow-up question for you.
Sure. I think as Gary mentioned, decentralizing is very important, because quantum computers can do number crunching. They can do. That's where I think the this ability to kind of do large number crunching helps you with whatever hacking, encryption, passwords, and things like that. So once we do the decentralized aspect, it's they will catch up, but the idea is to kind of move the bar higher, so that they can just come to one system or like snoop on one thing and attack that way, right? So that's why decentralized security is very important. Something I think Gary said about RPA for cybersecurity gives me an idea. It's like robotic cybersecurity automation, which is basically very important. That's one of the companies that I'm working with has this deep network security vulnerability assessment and remediation tool. It's called Squirrel Compliancy. They essentially squirrel out your vulnerabilities. This is a traditional network vulnerability assessment, but most people are supposedly using it. They all have this, there are a lot of companies, Tenable, Rapid7, which do this, but they go only like 2-3 levels deep. And on top of that, they do it like once a quarter, like an audit, right? What we need is continuous monitoring, whether it's for cybersecurity or privacy. It's very, very important, because the attackers, especially with the kind of quantum computing type of power they have, they're not waiting like, when you're asleep at night or whatever. It's a global world. Every second, attacks are happening, ransomware. Just now, the 2 UK ISPs got hit by ransomware in a very large way. That could be related to our friend who got off the show in the last one, where there was a power failure and I think internet failure. So this is something happening pervasively. So we have to really, really look at how we can do continuous monitoring, and then raise the bar in terms of how attacks are done, even including insiders. And of course, the privacy aspect has to do with, can you control how you share your data, so that every time someone looks at your data, they have to come back to you in some way. So
So where are the opportunities in that? I mean, where do we start building? Where should we start looking at investments when it comes to that monitoring? Because it sounds great, sounds wonderful. Someone wants to use my data, they're going to ask me for it. We all know here and also that are listening, that's not going to be the case. And so what are some of the technologies or what are some of the products that you're seeing out there that are going to help this? And maybe it's more of a mental, or excuse me, a mindset that we need to shift towards as individuals. But what do you see is the kind of next steps in this evolution of getting there?
I'll give you an example, right? So for instance, India is far ahead because the privacy was not so much a concern initially, but actually it has helped because it's been able to leapfrog in terms of the technology, right? They have this thing called Aadhaar, which is a digital ID. Everybody has it, right? Whether it's a street vendor or the billionaire. So what happens is that, like now for vaccination, for instance, the whole supply chain, there's an application called CoWIN, which is being implemented by one of the companies I'm advising. And they are able to, once somebody is vaccinated, they track the vaccine all the way from the manufacturer's warehouse all the way to where it's actually getting into somebody's arm. And then, the fact they were vaccinated, it actually is put into what they call a DigiLocker. DigiLocker is where the Indian government is giving everybody to put digital IDs, and they are ensuring that your IDs are private. Of course, we may not all trust the government to keep our private stuff, but that's the model. But to give you some idea how that is helping, and compare that to what is happening in the US, where there is no central tracking system. Every state is doing something, and they just went after the big names, the Deloittes and Microsofts, and you can see what is going on. And my friend just got vaccinated in California, MR, and he was telling me that after the vaccination, he got this little card which had a number, Moderna, some batch number, a lot number. How is that going to be authenticated? You go to a, it's like you can write a lot number. There's no way for them to verify anything. So that's what I'm talking about. See, some of these things, you have to give up something on your privacy, but there are ways to do it where you want to, wherever the data is created is where we have to put these in. Once the data is out, you cannot put any guardrails on it. So where the data is being created, so things that are private to you, whatever it is, your social security number and your health data, right at the time of being created, you have to be able to put like split byte. What it does is, right, you need to have one share with you. Without that share, nobody can get to the data. You could automatically release it for legitimate purposes, and you could release things that are not personal, which are for like health trends and research and all that. So those kind of products haven't come there because the enabling technologies haven't really made it mainstream, and that's actually an area of passion for me.
Well, this also brings up an interesting point, and then Gary, I'll ask you for a follow-up as well. But I mean, this brings up an interesting point. You look at the Internet of Things and wearable devices. I mean, we are technically generating data for those. So there's data we know, to your point, right? Our medical records, our medical history, but then that's day zero data. Day one data is what we start doing as UGC, user generated content, right? We are now generating data around our health and our well-being and our fitness, which then may or may not get used. And how do we control that is going to be a very big question mark going forward in the future. And in control, I mean, who has access to it and how does it get leveraged? This has been one of the biggest barriers to entry for the wearable movement on a medical level or health level is, where does this data go? Whether I'm sitting all day in my chair on Zoom or I'm exercising and walking around, where does that data go? Does it go to an insurer? Does it go to a government? Does it go to a corporation? Who wins and who loses? As a consumer, we actually are probably the ones that lose versus the ones that win right now, because that data, again, is just going anywhere, whether it's anonymous or not. In most cases, it's probably not. It's going somewhere. This is going to be a huge issue because you've got to, change that mentality, but also the applications have to change around that data share as well, so that everyone is a part of this picture. And maybe it's not all profit, because there is that model, but there needs to be some more decision making in that process as well. And Gary, I want to come to you. Sorry, Raghu, I threw a lot at you, so I know you probably have a follow-up. But Gary, I want to come to you. Anything to add on to Raghu's point, or even mine around this, availability of user-generated content?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we talk about user-generated content, but we use Google and
Yes.
Facebook and LinkedIn. And, where people are concerned about the privacy, and then they're on Facebook. Sign in, use your Facebook account. Let's look at tires. I'm getting so many tire ads for my cars. It's crazy. And, so, on one side, we got to look at who owns that data, and can we tokenize the data? Can we come up with other methods for the data? And then what are we willing to give up? Right? Okay, cybersecurity is important, but we're giving our data out. What are we willing to give up? Do we not want to use Google? Are we willing to pay $20 a month for it, or $50 a month to be able to use it to search everything? So these are the kind of questions we got to ask. But it's really funny, Kyle, when people talk about security. Oh, I don't want people to know about what I'm doing. At the same time, they got their pictures flying around on the internet through these data sources. And, and I've had conversations with folks from Facebook, right? There's a lot you can do. I mean, you're out partying, you're out here, you're going there, you're on LinkedIn, you have your birthday, you got your friends listed. Hello, you can develop a picture. So we got to re-examine the way that we treat the personal data, and the way who owns that data, and what are we willing to give up. This cybersecurity, you were talking about, the Internet of Things, it's a huge problem because, imagine, when the Admiral was on the show last week, it was interesting to have somebody, the number 2 guy in the U.S. military, former, right, talk about, you imagine it's literally one switch. Somebody comes in, they shut the grid off, they shut your house off, they shut your everything off, your car. I mean, it's a whole lot different than it used to be. So the water, everything. So we have to go down through and predict where those vulnerabilities are going to occur. We have to have these decentralized approaches, understanding that quantum computers are being developed in China, around the world, and it's going to happen. And by the way, there have been a lot of break-ins lately in utilities. What do you think's going on? Hello there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you test something, where do you test it, right?
So let's flip the script. I mean, we've painted a very dark picture, which is what needs to be said, because it's all very true. But now let's switch gears. As consumers, how do we protect ourselves? How do we look towards the future on protecting, or thinking about protecting, our data and our general privacy as a whole, with all of, again, we just painted, we use these platforms like Google and others, we use social networks, we have ourselves everywhere. We're now living in a digital economy, so everything we do almost at this point is digitized in some way, shape, or form. How do we, again, as consumers, start to protect ourselves? Where does privacy really play a role? And Raghu, I'm going to throw it to you. I mean, whether you're seeing companies, whether you have ideas of technology, where should we be thinking about this? How should we be thinking about this?
Yeah, I think to start with, we need to have better mechanism than passwords, to authenticate ourselves. So there are a lot of new technologies coming out there, QR code based, and we have, of course, biometric based things. But so that is one, but it's not enough to authenticate yourself. Again, this is the problem. You authenticate, and then once you go in, it doesn't authenticate again. So, like, suppose, my laptop, right? I leave it logged in. I go away somewhere. Someone else comes and they can do whatever as me. It's even worse, right? That becomes, because it comes in as an insider. So the continuous authentication is another thing, and using things like behavioral biometrics, where it is not just one aspect, but they look at all the different kinds of things you do. If it is a phone, for instance, especially remote authentication with a mobile phone, how you hold it, what pressure you put when you type on the phone, and things like that. There's a lot of technologies around that. So authentication is one aspect. Second aspect is, how is the data itself secure, right? That is more of the data security protection. And we need to have the insurance, cyber insurance hasn't yet caught up in terms of how well you are actually securing the data, right? And the privacy is the third aspect, which has to do with whoever is generating the data, and the person who's generating the data may may not also own it, depending on what type of data it is, right? If it is stuff like things that are coming off your Apple iPhone or Apple Watch or whatever, the health data. I mean, Apple already lets you share that without the personal identification, right? So that's okay, because as long as they don't identify you personally, it's okay to share the data for research purposes. The critical thing is, as long as it is anonymized, right? So the anonymization is very, very important. And in terms of healthcare data, there is HIPAA, which is nominally it's supposedly a very tough standard, but what usually happens is people just say that they're doing this, and it's not really kind of it's not outcome based. It's more kind of rules based, and that's not the way it should be. It should be outcome based. Is there people can say we are HIPAA compliant, but are they leaking private data?
Right.
You have to look at it from that perspective. I think that needs to be added into everything, because people are willing to share data if they know that they're actually sharing it. Many times they don't know that when you're, I mean, we kind of know when we use Google that, they're tracking everything you do, but it is not that obvious to people what is being shared, right? So I think it needs to be brought up more. You need to actually have a dashboard where, like, maybe instead of instantly things going off, you look at it and every time release it, kind of like on Facebook, if somebody refers to my tags me, I get to decide, whether it should be opened up or not, right? So some things are there, but they're only giving you. It's like an iceberg, right? What you can tweak and what you cannot tweak is it's like not even 20%, 80%. It's like 2% and 98%. So that's where things have to change.
And there's also an incentive model that can be tied to that as well. We've seen this, we've heard discussions of this, we just need to have it. A dashboard's a good example, but Gary's talked about this as well. I mean, we're already inundated with information already. Throwing yet another thing in our lives could be detrimental. But Gary, anything else to add on what we can do as consumers, focusing around our privacy as we live, and we'll continue to live more so on this digital economy?
I mean, like simple things, change your passwords. People use the same password many times in different locations, and change your password. 1.5 billion users of Gmail. So, we talk about data privacy. You're sending pictures, you're sending audio clips, all kinds of things through it. And we're worried about it. It's amazing to me, actually. We got Facebook. I don't know. I don't want my privacy. But then we're putting pictures. We're at a party, And so it's, some of the basics, two-step authentication on the basic side. The other thing is, you got to use a lot of common sense. There's a lot of phishing schemes out there, a lot of them. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting the stuff every day, all kinds of different ways. And the situation is, I got to be vigilant and the other thing, we're inundated with information. I think, Kyle, what's going to happen, and I predict, and, in fact, I want to develop some technology around it, an actual intelligent security assistant that actually is continually monitoring you all the time. And I mean intelligent, like Morpheus kind of assistant that actually is your guardian angel that's watching out for you wherever you are, giving you tips and helping you course correct so you don't have those problems. And that technology is close to being able to be developed now. I don't know anybody that's doing it, but I'm real interested because it's close to some of the things that we've developed before. And imagine that kind of technology. So, danger, Will Robinson.
Well, Spidey sense. I mean, this is, to throw it back to entertainment. I mean, this is what Jarvis had a role in the Iron Man and movies as well. And it's a good example for many out there to just grasp the concept, because this is something many of us have looked at. We saw this in many movies around entertainment, and generally entertainment shows us science fiction before it comes science fact. As we know with science fiction in general as well. So Gary, I'm loving that you're excited about this as well. And I do hope.
We did Eve as a smart assistant, right? So we're going through email files and folders and all that and development to be able to help folks. And we need it because we're inundated with data. We don't have time. I don't know about you, but I'm getting hundreds of emails every day. I mean, and it's that, another 2 years, when we're at that point, remember I said 10 million items within your personal file, your personal cloud within 5 years. It's happening very, very quickly. So we're to the point we can't even look at the email. If somebody's got a familiar name on there, you click it and you hope it's not a phishing scheme, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you hope, because you never know. And so we got to be more vigilant, but we really need to have these intelligent assistants, security assistants, to be able to help, intelligent assistants for everything. And, like a Morpheus or Jarvis, to be able to really lead our lives. And we're not that far away. I mean, I got to tell you, Kyle, some of the patents that we developed for EVA actually were on, in that direction. So we're not quantum leaps away from that.
I love it. No, I love it, Gary. Raghu, I want to come back to you. I mean, as we're coming to closing thoughts here, where is your big prediction or your bets being laid for 2021 around security and privacy? As you continue to look at companies in this space, and then where can everyone find you to continue the conversation?
Yeah, one of the areas which has not happened yet, which is in some ways good because the security and privacy can come in, is the searching within like audio and video, the media. Right now, like images, like they can tag your facial recognition and all that. It hasn't yet gone into videos and audios, things like that. Speech recognition again is there. So I think the privacy aspect there also is very important, and because AR and VR are going to come back this year, experiential aspects and the identity there again. Public events are one thing, but with all this stuff like at home, right? We are using voice activated like Alexa and things, and we really don't know, whether if you have Alexa on, is it going somewhere, or is it just?
Well, I mean, they say that they have people, Raghu. I've heard this.
I know. So there's a lot of different smart home kind of things, and it's all great for convenience, but we have to really have a much more rigorous way for us to share things. As long as I think something like what Apple does, I hope it's audited what they say they do. For instance, with Apple Watch, right? Everything, all your health data, you can choose to share it, but only in an anonymized way, right? So, of course, the key about what is anonymized is something which has to be looked in, because sometimes people use these terms very, broadly. They will apply only to one little piece of what they're sharing, not the whole thing, right? So there is like a lot of granularity, and the devil is in the details. So I think the HIPAA, kind of thing needs to go to all the other areas, not just the health related, but every area of your life, because everything ultimately can be useful to somebody else, while you may not care about it, but they can come back, whether it's identity theft, whether it is just it could be physical security, like all these kind of things, where people who are stalking you, and all these kind of things also. So which is becoming very, very easy to do now on the internet, right? Because once they break into your social network, pretty much they can see everything. And now business and personal relationships have come together. Gary and I are on Facebook. I used Facebook and LinkedIn separate, but I just gave up sometime last year. So.
Right. So absolutely great. Where can everyone find you, Raghu? We're coming up to time, so I want to make sure you get that shout out. Where can everyone find you online? Best place to connect with you.
Best way to reach me is on LinkedIn at Raghu S. Rao, and look forward to discussing more discussions, because this is an area that's very, very important.
Very, very, and will continue to be over the next decade and forevermore at this point, as well as Gary pointed out, with quantum coming sooner than later. Gary, closing thoughts. Again, where's that bet that you want to place and that others should be thinking about in 2021, and where can you be found online?
Decentralized system that can thwart quantum attacks. Build those before it's too late, because it's happened very quickly. I mean, look at where these intrusions have taken place just in the last couple of weeks, and there's a reason. They're not arbitrary. Right. So they need to happen now. So you can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn. You can reach me on Twitter. And of course, watch my show, GSD Presents. Great being here, Kyle. Thank you.
Wonderful. Gary, Yeah, thank you, Gary. Raghu, really appreciate your thoughts and insights around security and privacy today here in 2021 and what it means for both enterprise and consumers. So a lot more, as Raghu mentioned, to continue on this conversation, and we'll be continuing to speak about it here on VCTV in all of our discussions, as again, it does play a role in everything that we do. And thank you again so much to our audience for tuning in today. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, share, check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear more from Raghu, Gary, and all of our speakers who are a part of the VCTV family from around the world. And if you'd like to be on a show like today's, either as an investor or as an entrepreneur, reach out to the team and or myself. We'll find the right spot for you. Speaking of team, a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me everywhere online at Kyle Ellicott, along with on all social media platforms, as Raghu and Gary mentioned as well. Please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Add context when you do, where you saw us, where you heard us, and where you would like to continue the conversation as well. With that, we'll be back here tomorrow with more VCTV. Until then, everyone have a great day. Bye.